Welcome back to In Conversation With, where we explore the latest innovations shaping the cosmetics industry. I'm your host, Siobhan. In today's episode, we will be diving into the world of sun care, a market that is currently valued at 20 billion euros, but has the potential to grow to 177 billion euros globally, according to Euromonitor, because as our climate changes and temperatures continue to rise, consumers are becoming more proactive about protecting their skin from UV exposure and ultralight pollution. This heightened awareness has spurred three major trends in sun care: the skinification of sun care, innovation and indie brands driving growth, and Gen Z takeover. However, looming tariffs and evolving regional regulations present a crucial question. Will these factors stifle or spark even more innovation in the sun care category? To help me unpack this and more, I am delighted to introduce you to this month's expert panel. Jennifer O'Hara, Technical Marketing Manager at INOLEX, Sarah Dudley, CEO, the Sun Care Company, and Sandra Brown, Director of Regulatory Affairs, Brown and Associates Consulting. Welcome, everybody. Jennifer, let's start with you. At INOLEX, what key consumer shifts in sun care has your team been monitoring, and where do you see the biggest opportunities for innovation in product formulation?
Hello. So we also see the skinification of sun care, but we also see a shift of skincare providing more sun care protection. So there's also a sunification of skincare. So we're looking at the crossing of those two trends. And the constant challenge that is consistent in the market is that for sun care, we have to use UV filters that aren't necessarily sensory friendly. They all have some drawbacks with sensory. So we have to all create more formulas with more benefits and better sensory. So on the ingredient side, where we see the opportunity for innovation is to design ingredients that are going to support the sensory, but also support performance and give better sustainability.
Indeed. And Sarah, at the CEO of the Sunscreen company, how have these same trends influenced your approach to sun care innovation?
Yeah, so I definitely think consumers are getting the message that this is an everyday product. And so when you have that, you get this race was just mentioned, this idea of aesthetics, right? How do you make a sunscreen that doesn't feel like sunscreen? The only caution that I've always thrown to that though is as we innovate in terms of textures, formats, you're seeing things like sunscreen that is a whipped cream, sunscreen that you can spray out and coat somebody's body at the beach from a device. Like so many different innovations on that side. But I always worry when, in terms of education, so experts on social media or influencers, when the message is any sunscreen is a good sunscreen or the one that you wear is the best one, and that really drives customers or consumers to focus on aesthetics. I always warn people that aesthetics are so important. That's the sugar that makes the medicine go down. But you can't forget the medicine side, right? Sunscreens are fundamentally medicine. Provide such an important role. So aesthetics innovation has to go lockstep into performance innovation or efficacy innovation. We can't just focus on making these things the most innovative, unlike sunscreen that we've ever seen, if we're not also innovating equally in terms of efficacy of UV filters, efficacy of performance, efficacy into truly broad spectrum protection. I always tell people you need both, right? It's spoonful of medicine, but sugar and the medicine to get the right balance.
And thinking about efficacy, Sandra, at Browns and Associates, how have these consumer trends driven changes impacting policymaking for the sun care products?
Yes, hello, Siobhan. Indeed, we have seen some ISO methods being developed because we need to have good options there for efficacy testing. And as we all know, the European Commission, has advised that it is preferable to use in vitro methods. So we're really very delighted that we have a new in vitro method for testing UVB, But we also have other efficacy methods through ISO, such as the hybrid in vivo in vitro method as well for UVA and UVB. So, yes, there is a focus on that, and the industry is very pleased with that because also that will help when products are being challenged by consumer groups and by competent authorities on the label claim. So, we believe that the in vitro method is more reproducible and more effective and more cheaper economically and less likely to cause differences in results when everyone will be using the same in vitro method. Yes, and as regards new innovation from a regulatory standpoint, we are seeing a lot of ingredients coming to market that are natural ingredients, and we're really pleased about that because that is very challenging. We hear from the raw material suppliers, but we are seeing a lot of innovation in ingredients, and that is really good because there are pressures on UV filters from regulation, and we'll go into that later. Then also, there are a lot of requirements, we believe, from consumers for dual benefit sunscreens, as has been said already. And this is affecting the regulatory world because we have to make sure that we come up with advice on the right ingredients and also on the claim substantiation. So it's all very exciting. And so, yeah, innovation, even though we're challenged with heavier regulation and changes in the world from environment, we are seeing a lot of innovation in this area.
Jennifer, what emerging technological trends is INOLEX tracking, and how do you see this shaping the future of sun care?
So, for ingredients, it's always important that the technology advancement should always match a market need. And what we've seen in the market is we know consumers love mineral sunscreens because they perceive them as safer and more natural. However, mineral sunscreens are often thicker and they can leave a white cast on the skin. So, literally, just this morning before I came onto this call, we just launched a novel dispersing solution that completely changes the sensory to make mineral sunscreens spread easily and have an ultralight flow, so it provides easy application onto the skin. Of course, this ingredient is also 100% natural, biodegradable, and uses ingredients that people already use in sun care, but in a better and different way. So we're excited to partner with brands like the Sunscreen company that are already far along in developing great mineral formulas to see if our ingredient can make them even better. And I promise that's the only product promo you'll hear from me today, but we just launched this and we can't contain our excitement for it.
And Sarah, does that excite you? Or what other technological breakthroughs are helping the sunscreen company push boundaries in product development?
That actually sounds super exciting. And I love, so we're a customer of INOLEX and I'm already a huge fan. But I will say, I love the idea of optimizing things like mineral filters, making them perform better. I think that is when you're approaching innovation from a very deep understanding of what we can do to really serve the customer. But what I have seen sometimes in the industry, which can be a bit more troubling, and I think sometimes is the wrong direction, is when, as ingredient suppliers, they're giving the customer what the customer is asking for, but not necessarily recognizing what they need. So things like when we talk about SPF, right? A lot of consumers focus on, they say, I want an SPF 50, not necessarily understanding the science behind that or the metrics of it, but just saying that's my wish. What I've seen is things like innovations in anti-erythema ingredients, right? So yeah, formulators want to have a high SPF, so they'll include things like an anti-redness ingredient. The idea being that will give you on the test a better result. But when you ask what is it doing to actually improve protection, it's not. So you're giving the customer what they asked for, but are you giving them improved protection? No, you're not keeping that kind of end goal in mind. So the other thing would be things like chemical analogs in terms of it's a modified chemical version of the UV filter, like a homosalate. So we see that with the salicylates, but with all the UV filters, just modifying them so that they're no longer the recognized UV filter in the active ingredient portion. they're now being served up in the inactive portion. So you're serving the request of customers to have an all mineral formula, but it's not really, because you know that they're not looking in the inactives. And you've actually seen that move with going back a little bit, retreating from that, understanding that could be putting you in a position of mislabeling your product if you say it's all mineral, but you have analogs of chemical UV filters in the inactives. And so now what you've seen is you see brands saying all mineral actives, and that's a move to being a bit more transparent. But again, I always say you have to, manufacturers of sunscreens, we have to really, we have the understanding for what is the best benefit for a consumer skin. So we need to put it all in there and not just focus on the label game.
Challenging. Sandra, from a regulatory perspective, which cutting edge technologies are likely to influence policy making for sun care products?
I think because of the challenges of restrictions in the regulatory environment, we are seeing a new look towards what is available out there. I think we're beginning to realize as an industry that we may not have the full UV palette that we've been working with for over 30 years. They are all seriously being challenged, either from REACH or from the SCCS because of classification to endocrine disruptor, etc., etc. So I think the industry is really looking at what are the options. They're seriously looking at natural options, as I mentioned earlier. And I think I was really surprised when I did some read through. There are so many innovative smaller companies out there that are not part of the mass market large company list, if you like, and they are coming out with such novel ingredient selections, maybe not the traditional listed ingredients that we have to have when we market a product in Europe or the US or the globe, but they are putting out these novel skin care products with UV protection. So I think as a regulator, I would not endorse those products because we cannot prove their safety if they're not part of the approved listings. However, I see a lot of innovation from these smaller companies that I guess they're testing the market, and hopefully they will come on to have their ingredients added to the European list of approved UV sunscreens. If they do it in the US, it will take several years, unfortunately. But yeah, we are seeing a lot out there from the smaller companies, which is really promising because there was a concern in the regulatory world that with the restrictions coming globally, that we might be seeing the demise of some protection products. And this would be detrimental to health. Obviously, we would see cancer on the increase, etc., etc. So, yes, I'm very happy to say in the regulatory world, we are seeing lots of innovation, and but we have to wait and see will they get to the next step. There is one ingredient that is hoped to be approved by the FDA next year in Q1 of 2026. That is BEMT, and this is an approved ingredient already in the EU, but it has taken the supplier many years to get it through to this stage. And I know companies in the US and Australia and beyond are waiting anxiously for this ingredient to be approved so that they can market their products using this important ingredient in the United States. However, it just takes years and years in the US, and that is something that we have to put up with. But at least in Europe, it's a lot quicker. But the problem is if they are being restricted because of limitations from regulation, it is going to prove difficult to get new ingredients coming onto market. But having said all of that, I am seeing some movement with new ingredients and technological trends in that area.
Indeed. And Jennifer, do you see sustainability as a key driver for sun care product development at INOLEX?
We do. In sun care in particular, there are concerns about microplastics. So we have seen an interest in the past few years for biodegradable ingredients. INOLEX created a completely educational and completely non-salesy video called Goodbye Greenwashing Biodegradability that can help organizations understand how to make credible sustainability claims. And we predict that the next wave of sustainability needs will be measuring the carbon footprint of the formula and the ingredients. We also predict more interest in feedstock transparency and how we can find the most ethically and responsibly sourced ingredients. So, as part of that initiative, I just came back from a trip to the castor fields in India. In India, we're still in listen mode. We're not trying to implement any plan. We want to hear from the farmers and hear the needs of the farmers, but also share with them how their aranda, which is the Gujarati word for castor, creates so many wonderful things like beautiful skincare. There's going to be more to come to see how we can help our growers and also how we can educate our customers and our consumers about the value of diverse feedstocks. So that's the future that we see.
Indeed. And Sarah, how do sustainable practices support or sometimes challenge the sunscreen company's product development efforts?
Yeah, I'm actually super hopeful as well. I think that's a great way of looking at it to be really optimistic about what is possible in the future. I think if you put that energy into looking for innovative ingredients that take us to the next level in the future, rather than I see a lot of effort going to justify ingredients that UV filters, for example, that have been used in the world for 50 years, as though that justifies their continued use when there could be issues with the environment, sustainability. I would rather we take that effort and move forward, and that there's such smart, elegant solutions that are being put forward. So, for example, when we talk about biotech, right? Natural versus synthetic. And then we have biotech, the idea that you can make solutions that are quite smart and elegant. So I'll just give an example. We're working with a material that's called Tarula. It's from a company specifically, C16 Biosciences, otherwise known as Palmless. The idea that the beauty industry, the sun care industry, we have an issue with sustainability in terms of our use of palm oil or coconut oil, right? And deforestation in order to have crops to go to beauty, not even to food. So what are things that we can do? Tarula oil is a yeast. It is brewed, so it's fermented rather than having to distill plant seed oils or any kind of oil from plants. So again, so smart. It creates this beautiful product that is again very good for skin, right? And it's when you approach it with that frame of mind, let's create new solutions rather than just trying to work retroactively to justify things that maybe don't haven't earned their place in our modern world anymore. I think that's a much more fruitful effort.
And thinking about hopeful solutions, Sandra, in your experience, how is sustainable manufacturing affecting regulations and guidelines for sun care products?
Yes, it is a challenge because we are being asked more and more, how can we make these type of claims? And it is becoming quite difficult. For example, the reef friendly claim out of Australia was very much in trend in the last number of years. However, there was no real data to prove, in fact, that UV filters were causing damage to the reefs. And when we reached out for legal advice, the advice was that we really should advise not to make these claims because it is on it is not substantiated. So again, there's a lot of misinformation going out there, and we have to be really careful when we come back to our customers to say, yes, if you do this and that, you can substantiate that claim. Other claims, such as natural, nature friendly, and the green claims alone in general, green claims are again something that we've been seeing on products in the last number of years. But again, how do we substantiate these claims? Because there in different countries there are different capabilities to basically harvest ingredients in a certain way, and how then again the finished product in the manufacturing sites, are they following protocol? What is the protocol now? Because everything is in flux. The environment, the sustainability regulations are only being put into place. We have seen drafts, and but still there's still lead time to basically apply them. So companies are really very confused about how they can go on and make these claims. And then I know that the safe and sustainable by design, most companies are trying to put that into their manufacturing and into their product innovation, those that can afford it at least. But then they say once they do that, then they are asked, what about the green claims? Because obviously, green design and safe and sustainable by design are two different endpoints. Green is immediate, and the safe and sustainable is more long term. So there is a quandary for companies. But to finish up, I would say that it's about substantiation in general from a regulatory point of view. It's difficult because of the regulation not being set in stone as yet, different interpretations. And in different countries, even within the European Union, there are different levels of readiness to be able to do what is asked in these sustainable requirements. So, yes, it's in flux at the moment.
And if everything is in flux, Jennifer, what challenges and opportunities do evolving regulations present for ingredients you're using at INOLEX?
It's always an opportunity for us, right? So globally, we continue to see and invest in opportunities to create sustainable, biodegradable, and silicone-free solutions with unique benefits. In the US, going back to some of what Sandra was talking about earlier, is we continue to be challenged with the limited playbook for UV filters. So all the formulators were all hoping that the new UV filters, especially the BEMT that Sandra mentioned, will get approved in the US. In the meantime, INOLEX is working to identify efficient solubilizers for those UV filters. So we're ready to go when they get approved. And I'm also very excited about the in vitro methods that Sandra reviewed earlier, because I want to see how we can implement this to ensure that our solutions actually work with the UV filters to protect the skin.
And Sarah, how do these shifting regulations affect the sunscreen company's product pipeline and strategic planning?
Yeah, it's very challenging because I know we had talked about this last year, and last year we were at an inflection point, right? Where so our focus, to be specific, is typically North America. We don't sell into the EU. Health Canada and the FDA are the regulatory bodies that we spend most of our focus on. And last year, I would have said it's at an inflection point, right? Like the FDA called for submissions. They got the one for BMT to support that application, but they didn't get any other data from any other companies, even from the consortium of companies, to support the continued use of the other UV filters or to bring in new UV filters. You had the idea that the FDA said zinc oxide, titanium dioxide, these are the filters that are considered GRAS, generally recognized as safe and effective. The others have not met that precept of duty of proof. And so BMT is now on its way. Hopefully that sounds great. But it's now at this point, obviously we have a new director, and it's very hard to know which way the FDA is going to go. There's can be like influence of personality in terms of how regulatory bodies act. Now, we don't typically think of like personalities influencing it that much, but I think we are at that point. So I honestly have no idea which direction things are going to go in terms of the FDA. Health Canada has always followed their own path. Obviously, they're very restrictive and they focus intensively on enforcement actions and keeping their market safe from their perspective. So it's a bit different. But yeah, in terms of other regulatory innovations, like I know we had mentioned the in vitro, it's actually, I would say, a little bit nerve-wracking for the in vitro testing that's coming up because what it's been shown is that for sunscreens like ours, which are very heavy in terms of density, the in vitro method isn't necessarily ideally suited for it. It was a method that was created for your typical organic soluble formulas, which are specifically not dense. They're the same specific gravity as water. And so this test method is not necessarily suited for sunscreens like ours, and it has sometimes delivered very odd results. And so if we as a company are going to be have our products measured at this and then get some odd results, that does pose a potential issue for us. And so there actually is a consortium that is meeting through the ISO to deal with a very niche issue in terms of high density mineral sunscreens, but any high density particulate sunscreen could be at stake as well. So those little fine details sound very niche, but they could affect huge amounts of companies and formulas going out there. They're very technical questions, but at the end of the day, they do govern our suitability and our way forward as a company.
Indeed. And Sandra, what advice would you offer brands looking to navigate these difficult challenges with regulations affecting the sun scare space?
As regards the ISO method, I have heard about those issues indeed, and I believe that there is further work being done to try and incorporate the products that will have a problem. But our advice as regulators would be to not jump until they need to. So if companies have been working already with the in vivo methods and they work for them, ISO methods are not mandatory, so you don't have to use the new methods for all of your formulations. So yes, that's our advice, and there's always confusion about that. Should everyone just drop everything, what they were doing in the past, and retest their products? And that's what we remind them, that they're not mandatory. As regards other advice for the challenges of sunscreens, there is a growing knowledge, and there has been some surveys done on consumers that there is a misunderstanding of the labeling of sunscreens. And I think this is not new news. We've known about it in the industry for a long time, but it has been firmly confirmed in recent surveys done by Cosmetics Europe and different third-party groups. And so I would expect that we are going to see some changes in the way we label the finished product as regards SPF numbering and classification, the UVA protection in the near future, to try and make it easier for consumers. We want to give consumers what they want. So we are taking all of their confusion, and that's not denigrating them at all. I guess we're all confused at times when we see so many products on the market with so many claims. The idea is to make them more easier to identify, simply choosing one product from another, that all of the claims will read the same. So that is something that the regulatory world are working towards, to try and make the consumer have an easier life when they go out and try and purchase a sunscreen product, because the whole idea is for consumers to use more protection. They are not using enough sun protection from the surveys. They're not using it the same way that they're tested. But I think we as an industry know that they probably won't ever use them the way they're tested, 2 milligrams per centimeter squared. So we're trying to fill that gap somehow into advising consumers how much to use. But there is an increase in skin cancer, and so this is one of the main reasons why this change. It's a health concern, and dermatologists and governments are promoting the use of sunscreen. So as regulators, we are working in that area to try and improve the labeling. So yes, that, I guess, is the major change I would see coming down the track, and how regulation and the policymakers can help consumers use these very important products in the future.
And finally, let's wrap up with some inspiration. Jennifer, which sun care innovation excites you the most right now, and why?
So right now, the most exciting innovations are actually the boring ones. They're the ones that are going to make it easier for adults and kids to wear sun protection daily. So either by really light textures and protection for the face, and then fun formats for the body. There's a lot of brands that they've really innovated quite well on this. I personally use La Roche-Posay, but I might start looking at the sunscreen company as well. But also, as a mother to Gen Z and Gen Alpha girls, and as a marketer who keeps hearing about Gen Z and Gen Alpha for skincare, I have a call to action to the brands out there. I don't see enough education to these consumers that their expensive skincare means nothing if they don't use sun protection daily. And I'm often warning my girls that the best way to wrinkle is to burn. But I feel that they'd listen to it a lot more if they heard it on TikTok than from their mother. So I hope to see more innovations that target these younger generations by having skincare textures and benefits in sun care, but also with more education about why sun protection is cool. And then on a product front, my girls like using Sunbum mainly because of the fragrance. But I think we should try the sunscreen company's every morning sunscreen, or that product that's going to contain the Tarula. I hope I pronounce it correctly. Biotech ingredient that Sarah was talking about.
And Sarah, which emerging concepts or technologies in sun care captures your imagination these days?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for the kind words. Certainly, I think, I mean, our company was started with the idea of you put your customer in front of you and foremost, and you think, what are their objections going to be to using a wonderful, highly protective sunscreen every single day? So, specifically, we have our brand Ava Isa, which was named after my daughter, Ava Isabella. And it was at the idea that was 10 years ago where even millennial women, the number one cancer killer was skin cancer. And that as a stat was just mind boggling. And now, as you mentioned, like we have Gen Zs who are wanting to tan again, right? It's like every generation comes up against the idea of tanning and not understanding the long term damage that will show up later on in life. And so it's this constant problem that keeps reemerging. So, with all of that in mind, we keep that. How do we build the sugar right into the spoonful of medicine? So with that we do have the product containing Tarula coming out, and it's actually not a sunscreen product, but it was the idea of one of the reasons why people don't use sunscreen is because they don't want to not tan. They don't want to come back from a holiday and be pale. How do we build something in that overcomes that objection? So we were able to combine the Tarula with these other plant extracts to create what's called a biotanning effect. So you actually are enhancing like a golden appearance of the skin. It's not DHA, it's not erythritol, it's not a self tanner in the traditional sense of the word. It's something that after the course of 10 days of use, you can visibly see a more golden appearance. And if that means that I can get Gen Alpha or Gen Z or even a baby boomer to put down either a not great sunscreen or a tanning oil or just a tanning behavior, use a great sunscreen and then use this product to get that benefit, then I think that is the way forward, right? We just meet the customer where they're at, that we provide them solutions that says you don't need to compromise the safety of your skin.
And Sandra, is there a particular innovation in sun care that you find especially promising or game changing at the moment?
I really like Ultraviolet out of Australia. They have developed hybrid sunscreens that protect the skin but also enhance the natural glow. I really like that. Their super glow drops can just make a difference to your complexion, and I really like that. Somebody brought it over from Australia for me. That's the thing, when you're in the regulatory world of sunscreens, you get these products given to you, check them out and so on. But generally, I like a lot of the mass market brands in Europe. So as long as the product has a high SPF with UVA, but I also like the additional claims of anti-aging and botanicals, free radical protection, all of those additions. I also like a waterproof product. I think that's important as well. But still be aware that you have to reapply the product once you've been in the sun. But I think the main message really is getting back to consumers. And I think there's not enough education out there, and we really need to change that. The influencers, sorry, are out there, but they really themselves need more education. And I think they're doing a good job, but if we have to rely on the influencers, we really, as regulators and company owners and suppliers, need to help them do a better job, because really the end product of not using sunscreen is aging. And I think if the young people of today realize that if they didn't and they don't wear sunscreen, they're going to look aged after a small number of years, they might think twice about it. So education is key. And I want to give a special heads up to, and a special, if you like, kudos to the sunscreen suppliers, INOLEX, and all of those companies, because I think we have to rely on those companies, and they're really doing a great job to respond back to the regulators in REACH, for example. in Europe, where the suppliers are getting hit with a lot of questions to do more testing. And I think they're really doing a good job, and they have to be innovative in themselves because they have to now address the environmental and new health risks that we are allegedly seeing, and though not substantiated. Endocrine disruption is not substantiated. It is just that these ingredients might mimic the hormones in the body, not substantiated at all. So I think the suppliers are doing a great job to defend the ingredients, and we want to encourage them to do that. So I think in the future we need to make sure that we're speaking to the suppliers. So INOLEX, I know you're part of FC and you're doing a great job. So I'm going off track here, but yeah, let's keep up the good work. But I certainly try some of your products from the sunscreen company, Sarah, as well. And yeah, thank you for the opportunity. I think I've answered the question, Siobhan.
And thank you so much, Jennifer, Sarah, and Sandra, for sharing your insights and expertise with us today. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in to In Conversation With. We look forward to exploring more topics on innovating cosmetics next month. Until then, take care and stay inspired.